Next week, NASA is expected to launch their final space shuttle mission, 30 years after the program began. What have we learned from these missions? How has science benefited? And what remains unfinished as we end the Space Shuttle program? Tonight, we're joined by members of the final crew of Space Shuttle Discovery as we explore man's hunger to visit and understand outer space. I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. Joining us tonight are Colonel Benjamin Alvin Drew, Mission Specialist, Discovery Crew, STS-133. Dr. Julie Robinson, Deputy Program Scientist, International Space Station. And Nicole Stott, Mission Specialist, Discovery Crew, STS-133. Welcome to all of you. And a special thank you for all the work that you do. Before we get into any of this conversation, you've done so much for our country and true heroes. Thank you for joining us.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Let's start off with the very first question that I always wonder about when I talk to astronauts. What does it feel like leaving Earth?
Well, it feels awesome. And it feels like, I think about like the first time that I did it, and you're sitting there waiting, you're very anxious, it's been a long time coming, and you're in the seat, and you get the 10, like you guys just did, the 10, 9, 8 countdown, and you get to 6 seconds, and the engines start, and you get kind of this rumble, and I think at that point you're like, wow, we're really going to do this, and you're in your seat, and you've got things you've got to watch, you've got to work while this is happening and monitor the systems and all that kind of stuff, but 6 seconds that starts, and it's not really shaky yet or really rough at that point, but then when you hit 0 and those 2 solid rocket boosters light, you almost forget you were ever on the launch pad, because you are really, it literally feels like you are kicked off of the launch pad and you are going somewhere fast. And for me, it's just one of those things that the big smile comes on the face, and I'm either saying or thinking woohoo behind all that, and then you get back into it. But it's shaky for about 2.5 minutes, and then it calms down a little bit when the boosters leave, and then once the engine's cut at 8.5, it's just this smooth, prepare to float out of your seat.
Is it a high you ever can find anywhere else?
You just can't get there. The amount of energy, the amount of power you're feeling when you're sitting on top of those rockets, when you're lifting off the pad, I don't think you took all the subwoofers that have ever been built and put them on your couch. You still couldn't get that rumble.
Okay, but the other side of the coin, we have all witnessed very sad moments with the space program. When you hear that 2-1 and everything goes, through your mind, do you think about that? Is there fear, worry, concern?
Not by the time that we get to that point. For me, at least, I don't know how it is for you, Nick, the time for that is when I'm on the van going out to the shuttle. I'm thinking about that, but almost as soon as I step off the van, they hand me my helmet bag and we head for the tower. It's just, I've got things to do. You've been training for a year, and imagine if you're in a dance troupe and you've got your dance moves in. As you go out the stage, you're kind of going through your opening moves to make sure you get off to a proper start. And that's at least what I'm really much more focused on. I'm more worried about doing something wrong than about something going wrong around me.
Really?
Yeah, agree.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Robinson, has this been worth what it's cost us? The space program, what we have learned, what we have found out, has it been worth it?
When we look at the value of human spaceflight to the American people, we have to look at a bunch of different things. One is the importance that exploring into space gives for our whole economy, the technology drivers, developing new technologies, keeping America on the edge of the competitive world in developing those things is really important. The next is the importance of the way that we've built good international relations through the peaceful uses of space. When you put those things together, and then you add on top of that the scientific discoveries, I really believe that the sacrifices that some astronauts have made for that space exploration has been a great gift to the American people.
On a total side note, our audience, I'm sure, notices you're not wearing a blue flight suit.
They don't give scientists blue flight suits.
Ever have those days when you wish you were up there?
One of the great things about the astronaut corps that we have today is so many of them have such a scientific background or a love for science, even those that don't, that as we work with them ahead of the flight, we almost feel like we're with them when they do the work on orbit.
Yeah, and I guess in some way you're up there for all of us. When you're
Oh
up
yeah,
there.
I mean I think that's the way we all look at it, and the science certainly, after living and working on station for a while, you really look forward every day. Okay, what am I going to be doing that, has something to do with some research activity that's either where I'm the subject, or there's some really cool thing going on behind a rack where we're burning little flames to see how fuel, can be more efficient, or how crystals can be grown more cleanly. And, we talk with Julie so much before going, and with the investigators that are part of all of those science activities, that, we really feel like we're a part of their team as well. So I think there's this kind of joint thing that goes on that, we get back and we're excited about, okay, what did they find out? And, can we get the feedback from them about did the work we did up on station or on the shuttle, really help you? And it's really nice to see that, the majority of the time, I think all of the time, that's what happens. There's this very positive relationship between the scientists and between the people working the stuff on orbit.
Our producer was just in the studio before we started the show, and she was taking pictures of you guys, saying she was going to be the coolest mom around because she has photos. I would assume you're the coolest mom around with your kids, because your child in school, because you were out there in space.
There's little bits of time where you're the coolest mom. Like today, I dropped my son off at school in the blue flight suit, and that's when they notice. They're like, "Oh, wow, look at the outfit." I think stands out more maybe than the person in the outfit, but. Yeah, I think he enjoys it. It's good. And what is really a positive thing to me is that when you show up in your flight suit and they start asking you questions, you're generating excitement for them about something else. And it's really neat. We're at the point in our post-flight activities where we're actually going and talking to people about what we did. And going to schools and talking to kids is one of the best things we get to do.
So, Colonel, hard to see the Discovery shuttle shelved, or however we want to put it?
It's always hard to see something with such a great legacy as that.
And that particular shuttle has got a wonderful history.
Yeah.
Yes, and for us it was especially because that shuttle, it didn't show any signs of wear.
I was reading that even on the last flight, it was still in perfect shape.
It was great. I've been flying aircraft for more than 25 years now, and it's so many different moving parts where everything works. We have backup systems and things, but usually there's something not quite right with any machine, and the shuttle's probably the most complex thing I've ever flown. It's every single system, life support system, electrical system, is as complex as any aircraft I've ever operated. And I've worked in mission control for a number of missions. I've been up on one previous mission to this, and there's always a handful of minor things that are not working. Now, there's nothing serious, nothing critical, but there's always a short list of gripes. And this one we come back with, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing. 2.3 million parts on this thing, and they all worked. And you go, we're gonna shelve this. And that's,
what do you attribute that to then?
For me, it was the pride of the workers at the Cape. They knew this was the last flight of Discovery. Many of them knew that they were getting pink slips at the end of that, because their jobs were done. And it was a testament to their professionalism. It says, we are pros to the end. We're going to show you that you're going to see the best order we've ever seen come out of this processing line here. And they just put their heart and soul in it, and it showed. It really showed.
Doctor, what do we do when we say it's the end of the program? Now, there's one more flight leaving next week, but that's it for the Space Shuttle program. What does that mean for our exploration of space, though?
So the really interesting thing about the transition from the shuttle program is that we needed the shuttle to build the space station, but now that the space station infrastructure is there, the laboratory's built, all the workbenches are there, we can really use the new vehicles coming online, the commercial vehicles by Orbital and SpaceX, to get the cargo back and forth. And so our research program on the space station goes full bore and, in fact, will increase and expand now that the assembly of the space station is done.
Talk a little bit more when you say the commercial vehicles. Explain that to the audience.
So one of the really unique things that's happening in human spaceflight today is a transition from the simple delivery of cargo, and potentially even a transition in the future of delivery of crew to being a more commercially managed enterprise. So that NASA buys that service just like NASA goes and buys a FedEx delivery of a package. We don't have to send a NASA-designed vehicle out to deliver a package. And as space moves to that mode, and it's in that transition today, that's going to open up space, and especially orbit, for all kinds of other commercial enterprises, perhaps in the end for other benefits to come back to Earth. And so we're in the middle of that transition. It's a little bit painful, but in the end, the American aerospace industry, they helped build every vehicle we've flown today for NASA, and they definitely have the capability to build these new vehicles on a more independent type of a structure.
Let me throw this out to everyone. What do you see the future of space for man? What are we going to do out there? Why all of this work toward what goal, do you think?
Well, I think, and this is just one of the things, I think, and we've seen it in the programs we've had so far to date. One of the biggest things to me is that, and when you look at the science or how we live there or whatever it is, the systems that we use to maintain the station or to just be able to survive up there, the solar panels that we use to generate our electricity, the water reclamation system that we have, where we can actually generate our own water from byproducts that are up on station now, and all of the science that's going on up there, everything that we've done has kind of this twofold aspect to it. It's for sure helping us figure out how we move further and further away from the planet. How do we explore further, get out of low Earth orbit, do things better in space, keep our astronauts safe in space for going further away from the planet. But I can't think of anything that we do up there that, on the other hand, doesn't have some positive benefit to life here on Earth. And that's bringing water to people, clean water to people that don't have clean water. I mean, the stuff that we're doing, these systems that we use on station can be modified in ways that allow us to very simply go out to rural areas and, make clean water for people. Mm-hmm. Renewable energy sources. You look at those huge solar arrays on the space station, and that's where we get our power. We're not plugging into anything. There's not a big plug running from the, Earth, for us to get our power. We do it independently up there. And so that is a huge thing to me, this benefit to both, let's get further away from our planet and explore and figure out new things, and how do we make life better here on Earth as well.
The other end of that is, as much as we want to take care of the Earth isn't necessarily good at taking care of us. This planet has a bad habit of wiping out its dominant species every few million years. So we get to hold the scepter for a little while, and it'd be nice to have humans when we're not the dominant species on Earth, somewhere else. So my thought is expand your frontiers or die trying. There's other planets out there that, from the things we're learning about how to deal with either microcosms on board the space station or trying to work with our own climate, that we can do things like eventually terraform places like Mars and Venus so that they're livable places to go. So if we get hit by an asteroid or a supervolcano or some other major catastrophe decimates life on Earth, we've got human beings elsewhere to start again or just continue to pick up the pieces. When do you want to start that journey to go do that, to get that life insurance policy for our species? Time for us right now. As soon as we have the capability to expand, we need to start doing that.
I'll let you finish up this conversation on this.
Well, let me pick up on the Earth benefit side for today. For example, on Nicole and Al's flight, they had the final bit of research for some vaccine development work that's been done by a commercial company working on the space station. They have a candidate vaccine they've identified for salmonella food poisoning. Imagine all of the tens of thousands of children around the world that die of salmonella food poisoning every year. Even here in the United States, people die of food poisoning in the hospital.
Explain to me why
so having
it has
a vaccine
to happen.
is amazing.
Why does it have to happen on a space station? What's the benefits of doing it there instead of a lab here?
This is why she's here.
I know, that's what I want to find out. Yeah.
So the basic discovery that underlies all of this is that we found that when bacteria fly into orbit, some of them, but not all of them, get more virulent, more able to cause disease. One set of researchers from Arizona State University identified the genes that turned on to cause that virulence, and it was a completely new pathway, not observed and not used as a target for vaccine development before. So there was a basic discovery about how at least some microbes make us ill. That discovery is linked to that floating around in space that you see the astronauts doing. When these bugs are floating around inside our bodies trying to make us sick, there's a similar pattern that happens. And so it's just a lucky chance that going to this novel environment gave us new insights into how bacteria make us sick. Then what the commercial company did in a completely separate line of research is they started using space as a rapid screening tool. So rather than trying to take every kind of microbe they could think of and test them over and over on Earth, which sort of a needle in a haystack approach, by using this process in space, they could very quickly hone in on some strains of salmonella that would cause an immune reaction in us, so be a good vaccine without making us sick.
Okay, I'm going to go I'm going the whole different direction now. Over to Nicole. back down underwater, actually.
Yeah.
You were underwater also. So you've gone to the heights of space and the depths of the seas. What was that about?
You know, that was a really cool experience too. And this was one of our NEMO missions. What does NEMO stand for? NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations or something. And it's I know. We just
NEMO
call it
9.
NEMO 9. And it was the longest NEMO mission we've done. We were down there for 18 days. And we went into it with...
down where?
I'm sorry.
Depths.
We were down... It was about 70 feet. And there's off the coast of Key Largo, in one of the preserved areas out there, there's, I think, the only habitat of its type, kind of the size of a school bus that sits on the ocean floor. And they are set up in a way that allows you to do some really interesting research down there as well. Not just, leave, go dive, look at coral or something every day and come back in, but we were taking space applications, things like using robotics for medical procedures, surgery. So we had this really neat robot inside of the habitat, and we were working with surgeons in Canada, and how do we do remote, kind of telesurgery, or providing the people, the crew on board a station or an underwater habitat with the ability to work on a patient when they are not, they are not skilled surgeons. Things that we'll have to know how to do when we go back to the moon or, on further to Mars or somewhere else. And you can't have that whole cadre of specialists with you. How do you take advantage of that?
You thought it was easier in space than it is underwater.
Easier. That probably had to do with a spacewalk. And being in a spacesuit out in space is, I think the work to me was easier than being in the spacesuit in a pool underwater. Underwater doing that. But NEMO was fantastic. We looked at new spacesuit designs because you could weigh yourself differently as you were on the ocean floor and see how those things would work. How do you build structures? All the kinds of things you can imagine potentially doing in space we did underwater. And it was, for me, a really neat analog because I hadn't been to space yet. And I remember getting to the station and thinking, wow, that was probably some of the best preparation, best training that I did, was living in that small space in a place where you can't just walk out the door. You have to put on special equipment to go outside. You have to be thinking all the time about, how you're using the systems around you and stuff. And because for us in NEMO, you couldn't just swim to the surface. You'd already been down at 60 feet for over an hour. You're not just going up without hurting yourself. So.
Now, you talk a little bit about spacewalking. Both of you have walked in space, but you're the 200th person to step out into space. Kind of a little milestone there. Do you get a pin for being 200th?
We pinned something right into him,
I maintain now, maintain then that there's two people who know two milestones out there in space you want to count. There's Alexei Leonov, who was the very first person to ever go out and do a spacewalk. There's Ed White, our first American, who didn't have the benefit of Alexei's experience because of Cold War secrecy. And then everybody else is an also-ran. Now, I'm happy to be in that club of also-rans, but it's like, well, you're the 200th person to cross the line in a marathon.
But let's look at it the other way. The billions of people that will live and have lived, you're one of 200 that have walked in space.
And hopefully by the time I die, that number will be in the thousands or higher. The low Earth orbit, when we make, because the whole push we're trying to make now is making low Earth orbit much more accessible. Not just to NASA, but to the rest of the population. A lot of these commercial folks aren't looking at NASA as their primary customer, but tourists and everything else, it becomes a destination at some point.
Okay, should we be looking at that? Should space become a tourist trap? I mean, is that the right direction to go?
Well, it's the right direction. I think we're right now in space travel where we were back in maybe the 1930s in aviation. You have these barnstormers, you have these fledgling airlines going out there, and so it's not just these pioneers or daredevils out there getting in these little ragwing flyers and zipping around. There's a point where the rest of the world is ready to go make use of space. It's not a novelty item anymore. It's a medium by which you can send mail or transportation. And we've done that way in unmanned satellites for years on end. I think there's a point where humans are going to get themselves into low Earth orbit. They send us up because they can't get themselves there. But now the technology is advancing to where they can. And so I think it's just inevitable. It's not whether it's right or wrong. It's like, is the sun coming up in the east right or wrong? It's going to happen.
Okay, and I don't want to poo-poo you being the 200th person to walk in space or you walking in space. I'm not going to let you do that.
Okay.
That is just, to me, the most amazing thing. I read somewhere, I think it was you who had said, it's being in your own little vehicle, your own little contraption out there, and you're in the middle of space.
Yeah,
actually.
I mean, it's like, when you're inside of the spacecraft, inside of your shuttle or your space station, even though that, the hull of those things are pretty thin too, but, you feel like you're kind of you're in your house, you're in your home, and you go out in a spacesuit, and really, I mean, that one suit is providing you with everything you need. It's giving you the air to breathe, it's keeping you cool, it's your communication to and from, the people that are there looking after you inside of the space station. It's your visor to, look out and, definitely get a totally new and even improved perspective on the planet over what you had looking out that window of the station or the shuttle that, is beyond description. I mean, that is so impressive. And then you're looking at it through just this, visor that is on your own little suit and crawling around that station, and it's awesome.
I saw some footage, and I think it was the Colonel out there, where all you're hooked on is by the bottom of your feet, and you're kind of just like there doing... I don't even know the words to ask the question, but that has to be insane. You have to feel like, if that snaps, we've all seen these movies, and the guy just floats off. None of these things are the fears that you guys have?
It's a little safer than that. We have typically one or two ways of tethering ourselves to the space station. So it's not that we're just hooked in by our feet.
But still, I mean, really. I fall off a bike, I'm on the ground. Where do you go? It's just... The whole concept, and I don't know, I'm probably, as I said earlier, geeking out about this whole thing because I just think it's so amazing what you folks put yourselves through. And any astronauts I've ever spoken with have been so casual about it in that, well, it's our job or we work at it. And I don't...
Or you train so much, yeah.
Okay.
It's for me, it's not so much a fear, it's just...
An appreciation.
How cool is this?
There's what I'm looking for.
And that it wasn't so much that I'm going to fall off and going, how am I going to make myself not look at this incredibly gorgeous scenery around me and focus on the task in front of me. I remember, Nicole, when we walked out, went out on my first spacewalk, we were over top the Amazon, and I guess it's dry season down there because you could see all the rivers and jungle and all the estuaries, and there's a couple of puffy clouds down there. And I'm just going, this is just amazingly beautiful.
I had to go,
I was like, okay, you've got work to do, time to get busy. I'm trying.
It is. It's a really impressive distraction out there, how beautiful the planet is.
Yeah. When astronauts come back, I'm going to ask the doctor this, is there a fear life can't give you the same fascination and excitement that being out in space can do? Is there any of that happens with astronauts?
Scientists actually look at that, psychologists and people looking at space human factors, and especially with the point of view of helping astronauts that explore beyond Earth orbit, when they look back and the Earth is only a tiny dot. So how does the experience of being in space? And what they found is that when astronauts come back, it's a transforming experience, and it lasts for their entire lifetime. And in a way, coming back to what you were saying about space tourism, maybe that's that component of it that the public really needs. The more people that have the opportunity to see the Earth from that perspective, to understand how small the Earth is, and even how precious it is, how vulnerable we are to its success, is a really important thing.
People are always talking, here, this is going to be my very tabloid question as we get toward the end here. People are always talking about aliens, UFOs, all of that. From the perspective you two have, what do you think about all of that?
Well, I'll tell you, I've gotten the question, have I seen anything up there that, was unexplained? And I didn't, What I saw was things that were a surprise, You knew what they were, but it was a surprise. Seeing a shooting star go between you and the space station and the Earth, and, you're so used to that being an experience that you have when you're looking up and looking down and seeing things like that. And, so from the question that you get of have you seen anything, have you experienced it? No, there's some wonderful surprises up there, though, and I think that's what leads me to believe that, this is a universe that God created. That I think there are many wonderful surprises we have to look forward to.
Interesting way to avoid the actual.
No, not avoiding it, because I think there is every possibility of life out. Beyond our planet.
Yes, I think Carl Sagan popularized in the 70s. I was a kid sitting there watching Cosmos, and he would say millions and billions. I mean, the universe is so huge that there is life out there. There has to be.
Yeah.
It's almost inevitable.
But it's because of the size of the universe, us encountering them quite yet.
Now the
it's
issue
not so likely.
is back to the size. Okay, we've got the numbers. If you look at the numbers of stars with planets, it's almost a statistical inevitability that there's intelligent life out there in the universe beyond us. The other problem you have, though, is the distance. It would be impractical even to communicate with these if there's another civilization because of this incredible distances. It would take sometimes dozens or thousands of years for just a light signal between you, to travel back and forth. Now, if you were to take yourself and travel at that point, and you still got those vast distances covered, and I think that's what's going to keeps us isolated from one another, is just that tyranny of distance. And unless we can overcome that, and our laws of physics don't allow us to get there right now.
Well, thank you for getting here right now. We run out of time. I wanted to ask the question about on Earth, my cell phone, if it's cloudy out, doesn't work. But you folks are communicating all that distance and all the work you do, just amazing. And thank you so much for taking the time to come in and share your stories with us and all the science that comes from it. Thank you very much. Now, each week we invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Simply click on the local programs bar, pick Houston 8, and you can join our online community. There you can read about the guests, learn more about the topic, and even watch past episodes. Now, next Friday night on Houston 8, a look at how social media is changing and how it's changing us. And if you have a question or comment about that topic that you'd like to share with us, feel free to email us at houston8@HoustonPBS.org. Okay, and that does it for us tonight. Until next time, I'm Ernie Manous. Thank you for joining us. Have a great week.